Hey guys, welcome to Laurie's Little Studio. I'm Laurie and today I have this in front of me. I just finished painting 2 thank you notes to my children that I needed to take care of because we just had Mother's Day of 2022. This I bought for myself, and if you have never seen one, it is the Artistro Watercolor Set. This is the one that I think they call it the travel. It is for travel. What I love about it and why I wanted this is the way to open. As you know, I have been really unhappy with the other metal case that I have. I love metal cases. I can remove this if I want to and use the metal as a palette. It does come with these cute little blending wells, if you will. The sponge was packed in on top of that. And then you have your pencil sharpener, and it comes with the HB drawing pencil. They give you this awesome card. It also comes with the water fill brush. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So you would just dunk this in, let it fill, screw this back on, and then as you're painting, I've never seen one with these little push, it says on both sides. Push. And here's the lid. There was a paintbrush. Oh, here it is. Okay, and this is the brush that came with this set. It says Artistro. So we're going to twist the little bristles. It also is just kind of a small, medium-ish little round. And then sometimes if I flatten it a little bit, I can get these to go in. And then I'm checking to make sure I don't have any hair, any bristles going backwards, which I don't. Okay, so that goes right in there. Then it also had an eraser for the pencil, which is great. Okay, and then of course you guys know I like to use the white, the Winsor & Newton ink, mainly used for calligraphy, but I like having it for my watercolors. My brushes I need to put away. And then I'm gonna sew on a button while I talk about projects and what's been going on. So much has been going on. Alrighty, so you know, it seems very fundamental to talk about sewing on a button, but this was a purchased shirt, as you can see. It was purchased for my husband in Hawaii. It's just your basic Hawaiian shirt, which they're very fun. They're fun to make. They're fun to wear, obviously. But sometimes attention to detail can kind of fall by the wayside. And I'm just going to show you on these buttons. These are 2-hole buttons. And 2-hole buttons should be sewn on with 2 different sets of thread. And what I mean by that is you sew, you tie off, and then you rethread, and then you sew and you tie off. The reason for that is if one set of thread becomes loose and frays like this one here has, the second set should be enough to hold the button on. The other issue is if you make a shirt for someone like this, which I mean, as you can see, it's just very basic. It's squared off at the bottom. It has just a simple placket. There's nothing fancy. This one has been serged. The detail on a Hawaiian shirt is all about the fabric. and the bottom hem. So I don't recall ever seeing a true Hawaiian shirt with long sleeves. So they're short sleeve, they're just a fold down collar, really easy to put on, and then your little front placket here. Alright, so the problem is all of these buttons are loose and are about to fall off, and of course this one made its escape, so I'm going to sew it back, but I'm going to redo all of them. I'm not going to take them off and redo them. I'm just going to tighten them up with the same color thread that I will be using to attach this button on with. So let me grab my thread real quick. So speaking of Mother's Day, which we were briefly there at the beginning, I had a wonderful Mother's Day. Our oldest daughter and son-in-law, her husband, traveled up here to visit with us over the Mother's Day weekend. So they arrived on Friday, and we spent the weekend just doing fun things. They had some business to attend to up here, which was kind of fun. We got to participate in that as well. And then we went to a just wonderful garden. I want to say that it is like a botanical garden slash plant place where you can go buy, outdoor plants, or I think maybe indoor plants. I don't remember if they had any indoor plants. I think it might have been all landscape plants. It's McAuliffe's in Snohomish County in Snohomish, Washington. And I had the best time. I bought a 9-bark, which I've wanted for a long time. I can't remember the actual variety name, but it's going to be completely covered up in those gorgeous pinky red flowers. It was covered in buds. I bought a blanket flower, and I bought some yarrow. And then Candace and Rob, my daughter and son-in-law, bought a beautiful peachy flower salvia. They also purchased a purple osteospermum, and I planted those two things together in one of my pots outside. I hope that you guys had a great weekend as well. Even if it's not Mother's Day for you, I hope that it was fun and you enjoyed it. And I'm excited that we've got a lot going on in the coming months. My youngest daughter will be graduating June the 5th. And Candace and Rob will be coming up for that. We have family from out of state coming to visit. And there'll just be a lot. It looks like a busy summer, and that'll be fun. All right, so what I'm doing is I am lining up the buttons on this shirt. This is how I do when I have to replace a button. I'm going to go ahead and button up the shirt and make sure that those two plackets are straight. So you just go ahead and do the buttons. Boy, they're loose. These buttons are just barely hanging on. It is a good idea, if you want one little tip, to, when you buy a shirt or a blouse or anything with buttons on it, after you've made your purchase and you've brought that item home, if you really don't want to lose the buttons, let's just say they didn't provide extra buttons, which is the case here. We got lucky because I found that button on the floor in the laundry room. But if you don't want to lose your buttons, after you've made your purchase, tighten them up. Just go ahead and do a new set of stitches just to make sure that they're on and you're not going to lose those valuable buttons. Otherwise, the only other option is, well, not the only other option, but if you do lose one and you can't find it, you either have to just tell yourself, well, I'm going to have one odd button, no button, or I'm going to have to buy all new buttons and replace the whole entire shebang. So if you don't want to have to do any of those things, just go ahead and do another row of stitches on there. Okay, so what I'm doing is I see there's a little tiny mark right here on this shirt, right there. I don't know if you can see it, but that's where that button was before. And sometimes you'll be able to figure that out easily. You'll be able to see it. Sometimes even the thread stays in place, the button just falls off. But if you're not sure, go ahead and do this and mark where your button is supposed to go. I'm going to use just a little bit of this white gel because I can cover it up with the button and nobody will see it. It's funny how this there we go. All right. I was storing my button like this on my pin cushion with this large head pin so that it couldn't escape. I didn't want to lose it again. Okay, and then make sure that you have the button facing the proper direction. Sometimes there's really not a good way for me to show you this, but this particular button is domed. So if I turned it like this, it would be flat, and these are domed out. So this one would be domed incorrectly. So make sure it's facing, up the way it's supposed to be facing up. The other option that you need to be aware of is these buttons have a design, but they're all unique. So you don't have to worry that the top of the button is supposed to be up here. In other words, there's not a real delineated, this is the top, this is the bottom, this is west, this is east, or whatever. This particular button happens to have a lot of whatever this is, design going this direction to me. I think you might be able to see it. Let me pull this light over. Right here, these lines. Also, you don't want to, normally you don't want to have the holes of the button going this direction if on all the rest of them they're going this direction. So I'm going to turn this so that it's properly faced. It's dome side up, like so, and I need to put it right where I made that mark, right there. Okay, now because my shirt has this placket that goes all the way over, I can open this up and hide my knot back here if I want to on the inside. But I'm going to check to see what they did on the other buttons. Well, they didn't do that. You can see here's the outer thread, the threads showing on the actual placket itself. One reason to do it that way is it will keep the placket from falling out when you're wearing the shirt. So let me straighten myself up again. Just make sure that the hem, this side and this side, are matched up, like so. And if you feel like you're going to have difficulty, just clip it or pin it. I'm going to use a clip. And if you don't have, one of these Wonder Clips, you can use an office supply clip, one of these. Like so. Or even one of these. Just something to hold those together. Okay, so binder clip, a paper clip, a wonder clip. I don't particularly like to use pins because I tend to have issues with pins. They somehow manage to poke and stab and hurt me, so I'm not interested in using pins if I don't have to. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the hem is absolutely perfectly straight, because if it's not, you will have one of these won't fit right. The top will either be, you know, the button will have to fit too short to the buttonhole, or the buttonhole will be too short to the button. Alright, so here we go. Now before I even put the button anywhere near the buttonhole, I find where I'm going to put my first stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this needle up and poke it through like so. Then I'm going to put my button on, making sure that the two holes in this case are going in the right direction. They're not going this way, they're going this way. And the dome part of the button is facing up, not down onto the shirt. Okay, I'm going to put my button right on top of that loop of thread that I just stitched, and I'm going to stitch it. Right. Make sure I don't leave any loops of thread on the back. And okay, there we go. I'm going to continue to hold it straight. Now you can put Elmer's glue, and when I say Elmer's glue, I'm basically speaking of a children's glue stick. I like to use those. It will hold it briefly in place if you need it to, but it will wash out. It won't stain. It dries clear. It is a wonderful extra hand if you should need that. Alright, so I've gone over and through the holes twice. This will be the third. And I've pulled up a crazy little thread. That happens sometimes. I don't know why. Alright, and make sure that you're getting your sewing needle straight up and down. You don't want to be at a weird angle. Okay. Alright, so I've gone through this button 3 times, and I'm going to do this one more time. The reason I choose to do this 4 times, for me it's easier to remember. Just 1, 2, 3, 4. It's easier. Now, there's no great tragedy, to be honest, if I went 5 times or if I only went 3 times, because I'm going to tie off. I'm going to slip my needle under those threads. Sorry about that. I'm going to slip the needle underneath these threads that I've stitched across here. So right there, I'm just going to slip that under. I don't want to go through the fabric. I'm just going to go underneath this button. And I'm going to do that again. And this time, I'm going to loop my needle through the thread, and I'm going to just go ahead and cut it all the way up so that I can tie a knot. I'm going to put my needle in my needle pin cushion over there. Now I want to take my thread and split it in half. I did have it doubled over in my needle, so I've got 2 pieces, and I'm going to tie a double knot. So I just twisted it and it went through the loop twice. A double knot is stronger than a single knot, so it would be once through and twice through, like so. Just pull that nice and tight and then cut. And I'm going to get another piece of thread. Now this method that I'm showing you, this is basically a method of sewing on a button. You would not do this if you were sewing a button on to a wool coat, or a men's blazer or suit jacket or something like that. There is a very different method for those buttons. This is only really good for shirts that don't have shank button. Don't have a shank button. And if you don't know what a shank button is, that's one of those that have a piece, like a loop of metal, or part of the same button, like a plastic loop or a mother of pearl loop, carved under the button, and it causes the button to stand up on the fabric. I will show you one right here. Okay, now I've got another thread to sew with and my needle, and I'm going to do the exact same thing that I just did, but this time I'm going to come up with my needle on the top buttonhole, not the bottom like I did the last time. I want it to be different. I want it to be opposite. So this time I'm going to go from the top through the buttonhole on the other side, and through the top, and again I'm going to do this 4 times. Now if this thread that I'm currently stitching, here's my third right here, if it comes undone, if this thread breaks or something happens, there's a whole set of threads that are individually sewn for, so it won't completely fall off. Alright, I'm going to go underneath, pull it tight, and I'm going to go underneath, and this time I'm going to loop it through both and pull it tight. I'm going to cut my thread up here. Now some people would say, but oh, what a waste of thread. I agree, it is kind of, but this shirt does not have an extra hidden button somewhere. So I can either use a little extra thread to make these knots and keep these buttons secure, or I can risk losing buttons, in which case for this shirt I would end up having to go buy all new buttons. So, it's kind of one of those. Alright, now let's see if it is in the right place. I believe so. There we go. And it's not pushed up. The fabric is laying nice and flat. Now I need to do the same thing with these 3. This buttonhole's a little raggedy. With these 3 buttons. Because I sure don't want to risk, having these get lost. That would not be good. So how is my quilting project coming along? It would definitely be further along if I had not been busy over the 4 days Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Mother's Day weekend. But I wouldn't trade those 4 days for anything. So it's just going to have to be kind of a slowpoke project. I might have to put it, like let it fall down in the list of projects and pick up a different project while I'm working on the hand sewing, the hand quilting. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, I'm hand quilting a piece of fabric to make this view of this pattern. And I'm seriously thinking, because I'm hand quilting, I should just go ahead and start working on, I've got 3 projects literally behind me that I could be working on. So that might not be a bad idea. All right, so here we go. I'm going to start down here at the bottom, and I'm going to pretend like these threads don't exist. I'm just going to stitch just like I did with this one, and go 1, 2, sometimes you will find that you have a hard time finding the buttonhole to get that needle to go up through. Just keep trying. Your hand will figure it out if you're staring at the hole. It's just like that old saying, keep your eye on the ball. If you're looking at the buttonhole, eventually the needle will find where you wanted it to go. Isn't that funny? It's funny but true. All right, looping it over and then tying it off. And I'm just going to go ahead and get them all done, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about what the next project will be. I won't start that project in this video, but we'll talk about it before the end of the project, and I'll show you my progress on the quilted fabric. All right, final stitch on the last button right here. One, and I'm gonna loop it and then tie it, and we'll be done. So this shirt should, under normal circumstances with normal wear, be able to retain the buttons, you know, that I just restitched, and we should never have a problem again. But I would like to suggest, if you've not thought about it, let's say that this shirt was just completely worn out and you were done wearing it, you never wanted to look at it again, and you were going to donate it or get rid of it some other way, or use the fabric for something else. I recommend removing the buttons and putting them in your button stash, because first of all, they are most of the time either a silicone or a plastic or a nylon or something that's not going to, you know, basically degrade out into in a landfill. So if you could remove the buttons, then you'll have them for other projects. Even, you know, if you're just going to glue them to something. But you could also use this fabric for other things as well, if you thought you might want to. And I believe this one is, okay, so see, this shirt is 65% polyester and 35% cotton. So it would sit in a landfill for over 20 years before it would finally, you know, go the way that it should. But it could be used for patches or rags, dog beds, filler. You could use it instead of a polyester fiber fill. Lots of things that you could use that for. Okay, and I also wanted to talk about shank buttons. So this type of button right here has what is known as a shank each one of these little plastic buttons has this little loop on the back of it, right there. And they are, of course, they would be stitched on. I don't need for this to still be on here. They would be stitched on differently. So if you need a way, if you need information about how to stitch a button like this, see, all of these are Shank buttons. I am planning to do something along the lines of how to make a buttonhole, how to put a button on. Now these buttons, I will tell you, as cute, as adorable as they are, they do not work well for closure buttons. These are more decorative buttons. They would all be random in different sizes, and trying to manipulate this through a buttonhole could be, you know, enough to just make you want to go to bed forever. So, I mean, I love these. These are all, I believe, every one of these is a Jesse James button that I have collected. There's just a whole bunch of them down in here. And I use them to decorate projects with. I don't like to get rid of these. And this button belongs in a different container. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, so we just did 2 hole buttons. So let me see if that shows up on here. And I will zoom in. Okay. So we just applied a 2 hole button. But there are also buttons that have 4 holes. Now, the way I recommend that you apply a 4 hole button is that you stitch 2, just like we did on this one, tie off, and then 2, just like we did this one, and tie off. That way, if these threads break, but these threads are still intact, you're not going to lose your button. Lots of people will do a cross. So they'll stitch from left corner bottom to right corner top. Same thing though, just do it, you know, stitch 4, tie off, stitch 4, tie off, and then stitch 4, tie off, stitch 4, tie off. If this stitch 4, tie off breaks, then this stitch 4, tie off will probably stay, and you'll be able to get home and repair it should you need to do that. Anyway, if you are in a situation where you can get buttons, I recommend that you do it. They're not an inexpensive notion. This is the project so far. Oops, this was my Mother's Day card that I made for you guys. I think you might have seen this in a different video. I just love it. It's very pretty, and I'm going to put it out on my entryway table. I put a lot of my fun things out there. Okay, so I have my zipper, my threads that I'm quilting with, this needle guide that we will be getting into. I just have to push everything down just a little bit as spring and summer progress. I always kind of forget that things happen that, you know, can kind of take me away from the studio. But here is the fabric that I am quilting. Remember, I went all the way around. It's just a giant rectangle. And I went all the way around it with basting stitches to hold this together. And I am quilting a variety of different sizes of circles. It's hard to see on the print side, but you can see some of those on the muslin side. There's a couple right there. And I'm just kind of doing it randomly. I'm not really following any great, you know, go from this corner to that corner or whatever. I'm just stitching as I go. If I find one and I happen to have thread in my needle that I want to use, and I am using different colors of thread because there are so many colors on this particular fabric. I love this fabric, and I'm not sure if I still have the selvage. Is this it? I believe so. That looks like the colorway right there. I believe I actually used I made a loop for something out of the selvage, so I can just read it here. It is David Textiles, and it is called, I'll just link it in the description box below this video. It's a lot easier, and you'll have a link. If it's still available at Amazon, you'll be able to purchase some as well. That's where I got mine. Alright guys, so I think that's it for this video. It is beautiful outside. We have a blue sky. I'm going to pop a picture of today's blue sky right here. Can you believe that? Wow. It's still chilly outside, but I will take a blue sky any day of the week. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and hit the little thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed and you would like to, I would love to have you join us. Just push the little subscribe button, and there's a little bell beside it. That little bell will let you know when I have another video. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.